Welcome everybody, beautiful souls from all over the world again. So good, happy to see all these familiar faces and to see new faces as well. Great to see you all joining here for these Sunday sessions. Today an epic session, I won't spoil it. My name is Wouter, I'm your tech host for today. If there are any technical difficulty, send me a direct message and I'll try to sort you out as soon as possible. And for today's introduction, I will hand it over to our beautiful host, Engen from Italy.
Thank you very much, Wouter. Hello, beautiful people. My name is Engen, and I'm very happy to be one of your hosts of the Lightwork Collective. I would like to give a very, very warm welcome to all the beautiful, familiar faces. Today is a great vibe. I love it. I love the circle that is here for today's session. I'm really, really excited. And if this is your first time with us or you watch the replay, then I would like that you know that this is your safe space. We have created this space more than 3 years ago with a beautiful, beautiful core team. I'm so proud. Mimi is here today, Joe is here today, Trent, Vivian, and Wouter. You know, it's just like, we are this beautiful connection, like family connection almost. And we love to create. We love to hold space. We love to inspire you and really be your gentle reminder to practice self-care on a regular basis every Sunday. So every Sunday at the same time, we're here for you. We open our doors and each Sunday is unique. Each Sunday is special because we create our special guest speakers create sessions for you. So be sure every Sunday is different. It's totally different with huge value and is very powerful for you. So if you ever miss a session, no problem. We have our lovely Wouter who creates the replay in a glimpse of an eye. I'm always impressed when I see replay is ready. He's so fast. And you can find the replay on our very own YouTube channel. We have our own Facebook page where you see all the upcoming sessions announced. So yeah, always stay tuned so you know what's going on, and you can tune in when there's something interesting for you. Today, I'm very, very excited. I hand it over to Viv. Hopefully the line is stable now so she can introduce our special guest who she brought into our collective. I follow him online and I really feel he's a very interesting personality, but Viv will tell more about him. So Viv, I hand it over to you, and again, very warm welcome from me to everybody. So anyhow, I think we wait a few seconds, and if she's not able to tune in, then I would just hand it over directly to you. So Vegard, you can introduce yourself and tell a bit about your intro. I think, yeah,
yeah, that's
it's fine. It's fine. You can do it yourself.
That's completely fine. I've got some slides to facilitate this session, so it'll guide everybody who doesn't necessarily process super well just through listening. But throughout, I really invite everybody to participate in whatever way that you're comfortable. Just by listening and doing the work would be enough, let's say. But if you want to share some things, if you want to put some stuff in the chat, I will open up a few times where it kind of, it'll be very obvious where I'd love to hear from you. So it's not just me talking too much, although I have some things that I want to go through to set us up for an interesting session. And let me just share screen on this other side here. So there are some slides, and yeah, okay, great. Looks like that should be okay. So my name is Dr. Vegard Engen. This session, I called it Accepting Our Shadow. It'll be some work on accepting something that perhaps we currently don't fully embrace in our life. I will introduce a modality that I'll be using on my end to help do a deep transformation, working with a group. So whether you are here live or watching the recording, that will work fine. So, and if you want to watch the recording and go through this process again for other things, you can do that too. So on today's menu, I'll say a little bit about myself and where I'm coming from with this kind of work, because then you'll understand also why I put on this particular session, perhaps. And then I'll do an introduction to belief work. So if this is new to anybody, then you'll see where this is kind of hopefully coming from. We'll address a few myths that might create some limitations for us, and how this kind of work and through modalities like PSYCH-K can really be very powerful, even with quite simple processes that you can learn yourself. So I'll be fairly brief about PSYCH-K, so that we can crack on with the experience and that you get to have that. So that'll come towards the end. So here's me, this human being called Vegard. Professionally, I've been an academic for quite a while. I'm full-time employed at a university here in the UK, where I work on digital health and artificial intelligence. But this work is separate from that. So nothing that I say today will be on behalf of the university and those kind of things, because I created a different company that I've been running on the side of that since 2016, taking quite a holistic approach to therapy and coaching. I have a background working with the physical body and the nervous system, and also the main area of my work, which this falls in under, is energy psychology, which is also a very sort of integrated practice that works with the body too. There are processes that are more physical than others. So a lot of the work that I focused on initially was helping people with chronic pain. I myself was born into this world with chronic pain, chronic digestive issues. And it wasn't really until almost 10 years ago that I really got into the energy psychology work and saw how that had the most profound changes and transformations in my life. So this has naturally become a focus for me. So the company that I run is called Ephemeral Energy. Ephemeral meaning something that's not permanent, that changes, which is kind of the core of this work. And you know, we might have pain in our life, but it's temporary. Our lives are temporary. We know for sure that we will die at some point. So really what I'm having a mission for is to live a full life, to fully embrace what it is to be human, to own who I am and help others do the same. Earlier on in my journey of reading about personal spiritual development, this quote at the bottom really stood out to me. That death is not sad. The sad thing is that most people don't really live at all. I'm still learning the depths of that, say 2 decades later. But yeah, and this is part of today's session, really, because if we suppress parts of ourselves, if there are things that we just don't accept, then that in itself is going to be a barrier to live a full life, whatever that means. So this is one of the questions that I have for you. What does that mean, living a full life? This is where I'd love for people to use the chat or put, unmute and share. Hosts, I don't know if you want people to raise hands or how you do that, but please share. Light warriors, what does it mean to live a full life to you? So I see in the chat, inner acceptance, on my terms, being authentic, joy in the moment we live in the present, and to what makes you happy. Living yourself fully in a moment, listening to and following your soul, being authentic and honest again, being present and doing good, embracing the past, moving forward mindfully. Yeah, providing a purpose in this physical existence, more living in the present moment. It's kind of quite fascinating, which is great. Yeah, being at one with all parts of yourself, mind, body, spirit, mindfulness. Yeah, hopefully without chronic pain, ultimate wish. Yeah, I might have some perspectives to offer there, which may be challenging, but hopefully helpful. So living from a place of health, balance, and freedom. Freedom's a great word as well. As many moments per day as I can be in my totality and on the path of my own mission. Super. Balance. Health is wealth. Fully loving yourself and others so that we can love ourselves in the world, every part, embracing the transformation within, being deeply connected. Yes, freedom. Awesome. That's amazing. So I think we all can connect to this one, right? Thank you so much for sharing. Sorry if I missed something as it sped through. So where does this belief work come into the picture? This is what I just want to give an introduction to set up for our session in a bit. And the first thing I want to address is this myth that I grew up with, that we're essentially hardwired, that we are dealt these cards at birth and we're victims of that. We just have to make the most of that. I remember as a kid learning that things like if I were to head a football, I have to be careful because I'm going to lose neurons and they won't regrow and it can be permanently damaged and those kind of things. So there's a lot of interesting things that you might have picked up in your upbringing, let's say. A few things that I want to note here is that now it's pretty widely acknowledged, this phenomenon of neuroplasticity. Our brains can literally physically change. Neurons can grow and adapt, and the network in our brains can structurally change just naturally as we grow up, as we learn, as we exist in the world, and also through things like what we're going to do today. You might have heard of placebo or nocebo. Yeah, so it's another example of how things can change the power of our minds, and this is something that all, let's say, reputable, respected clinical trials will include for this effect and have randomized control groups, because it's seen so much in health-related research that, you know, what you believe about the outcome and what you believe about your getting will influence the results, to the point of surgery as well. If you believed you had surgery, but you didn't actually get the surgery. So I see some smiles, so probably people are aware of this. Nocebo is the other thing. If you then find, oh, you didn't actually get the new exciting drug, then suddenly you might create negative impact as well. And so placebo is much more talked about than nocebo, but it's two sides of the same coin. Now, in terms of genetics, and I chose the words in the previous slide purposefully, because you might have heard of some people who talk about it. There's a book called The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. So he's somebody who's very passionate to promote that we are not slaves to our genes, we're not victims of our genes. Epigenetics is essentially the science of how the environment and our consciousness affects our genetic expressions in our bodies. And modalities like PSYCH-K is one way to achieve this. And this is something that Bruce Lipton has a strong connection to as well. So him and the founder, I might touch on this later if people want to know about it. But the other thing is something called the matrix or the quantum field. I've heard it talked about in different names. So this might be a topic that you're all familiar with. But this is where, for me, the interesting thing is that you might have something that goes through a family. It may not have anything to do with, let's say, genetics in a pure physical manner. It might be that it's something in that family field that you're picking up and learning. But it might be that you're learning something as you're observing in your environment, you're adopting beliefs. So there's several things that could be at play. But the interesting thing with quantum is that time and space becomes a factor that we can play with. I see Founder's got a nice animation there. Thank you. So there's a quote that I want to share here as well. This is from, gosh, the 70s. Jane Roberts was channeling Seth. There's a particular book called The Nature of Personal Reality, where I think this is an important point to, like, the point of power is in the present. What we change in the present affects us and perhaps others through time and space as well. So with quantum computing and quantum physics, quantum mechanics, these sort of things are coming into some application. It's not just theory. So all to just give some different flavors of things that's really shedding light on the fact that we are not victims of our genetics. There is change and transformation that can happen for us at quite a deep level. And when it comes to beliefs, here's a little triangle. When I talk about beliefs, I really refer to subconscious beliefs. Although there's subtleties here, they might actually be in a conscious mind, but we don't want to be aware of them. Let's say if they're part of our shadow. Subconscious means that you can't access it consciously, but sometimes when you connect, you can access it, and it's not quite as black and white. But our beliefs essentially will drive our behavior. It does more than this, which in turn will determine our experience in life, which can reinforce our beliefs. And it's a bit of a cycle here. It can be a bit of a chicken and egg thing, because as we're really young, we'll be observing things. We're adopting beliefs from our parents, for example. But beliefs isn't really the only core thing for us to talk about per se, but I will be simplifying a few things for us just to keep it straightforward for this session. Now, energetic patterns might be another way to look at beliefs, because we will talk about beliefs as words and structures and language. Now, the subconscious doesn't really work in that way, but there are other things that could be at play, that we hold energetic patterns in our bodies. So Dr. Scott Mills talks about this, for example, who probably some people here know about, because he's also been involved with Mind Valley. But I will simplify things and not go into that today. But what I'll also say about behavior is that beliefs don't just shape and affect our behavior, but also our thoughts, our emotions are generated from that. If I just take an emotion, like an emotional response, like a fear response, anxiety. Now, if you have a belief that you are not safe in a certain circumstance, well, that's going to lead to thoughts and emotions of that nature. However, somebody else in that same circumstance might feel and believe that they are safe. So they will have a whole different set of thoughts and emotions generated. So our experiences, I want to also include here, like the experience we have of health, our successes in life as well, our relationship experiences. There's a whole bunch of things that I would bundle under experiences. So another little thing that I want to put across is at a level of the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, there's different views of this and different models. As an academic and a scientist, I'm not so attached to the different models, but there are some observations that I feel are very helpful. So our conscious mind, typically what's anchored in helping us navigate this material world, as we're engaging here today, it's capable of creativity at novel thinking, problem solving, and those kind of things, but it functions like a 1-bit serial processor, like it does one thing at a time. So when you're meditating and you get your conscious mind to perhaps focus on your breath, that's utilizing that 1-bit CPU, if you like. Whilst the subconscious mind is about the habitual patterns that we have, driven by what we call subconscious beliefs today. I've seen different estimates, typically 99 or 95% of the time that this drives us. I've seen it as low as 70. Again, I'm not so caught up in the numbers. Let's just take the spirit of this and say that most of the time, like when you're driving a car, it became habitual at some point. So you can then focus on other bits and bobs. And you might actually have had an experience where you've driven from A to B, and you're like, actually, I don't quite know how we got there. I just went on autopilot. You're right, right? So that sort of same notion exists here. But the big difference that I want to highlight now between the conscious and subconscious minds, this is also then something linked to left and right hemispheres of the brain, is that the subconscious mind, right hemisphere, also associated with this, is like a parallel supercomputer. It can deal with like, so Bruce will talk about 10 million bits per second. Where that number comes from, I don't know, but principle still remains. So if we just look at this and then take it to, if you're waking up in the morning doing affirmations versus working directly with the subconscious mind, I wanted to visualize it a little bit. So on the left-hand side, you've got an illustration of the conscious mind saying, I'm enough. I am enough. And then if you have the subconscious mind that believes, no, I'm not smart enough, then yeah, it's hard to change that, like the magnitude, if you see what we're like. But there is a way to change that. Because these beliefs, and you've got Henry Ford, perhaps you've seen this quote, you can view it as a mixtape. It's an analogy that works quite well with me, that in our younger years, when our brain waves are like theta up until year 7 or something like that, then we're absorbing, we're programming that subconscious mind to use those kind of terms. And it's a bit like you're recording a mixtape of all of your favorite music up until you're 7. For those of you who are like me, past 40, you know, if that mixtape is still playing, your taste in music has probably changed a bit since you were 7. So it might be some things that were great at the time, that served us at the time, that reflected our ability to understand the world at the time, may not be great anymore. So things like PSYCH-K is to help re-record that mixtape, involving process to look at, well, what are the things that maybe doesn't serve us anymore? What do we want instead? If you worked with beliefs, you might have said things like I've got negative beliefs, or the same thing applies to feelings, negative emotions, and so on. I really want to encourage a different language, at least for today, that there are no negative or positive beliefs or emotions, but we might refer to some beliefs as being limiting or self-sabotaging, or they could be enhancing or empowering to us. I'll unpack that a little bit, because as we grow up and we adopt all of these beliefs, so what if, I mean, that even if it seems a bit illogical, like why would you go around and believe that you're not enough, you know, or you're not smart enough, or whatever it is, or you might believe that anger is not okay for me to feel. You know, it might seem a bit odd, but actually these things have served a purpose. And maybe we just haven't been aware of it. But as you become aware, you can then decide, okay, is this something that still serves me or not? Now, with talk therapy, typically that involves a process of digging into, to finding out what's really been going on. Where did these beliefs come from? You know, you might uncover some childhood traumatic events that led to them and so on. But actually, we don't necessarily even need that. If we can identify what we want instead, that can be enough for modalities like PSYCH-K, and it's something that you can do pretty quickly and safely. So modalities like PSYCH-K involve a protocol to check whether it's safe and appropriate to do. And this would involve the superconscious, which I haven't talked about so far. You might talk about that as your higher self, something with wisdom that knows whether this is really appropriate or whether this might have some unforeseen side effects, or it's not the time right now, blah, blah, blah. So PSYCH-K in a nutshell was founded in 1988. How long ago is that? 35 years ago or so? Something like that. It's a modality that focuses on transforming stress and trauma and subconscious beliefs. Works a lot with trying to achieve a whole brain state, bringing that left hemisphere together into harmony. I haven't talked about that so much, but if that's got meaning to you, useful to have that in the picture. Something I can talk about later on if anybody's got questions. It's a fairly comprehensive framework where you can work at identifying limiting beliefs and transforming them sort of one by one. There's some processes that will look at things like a core belief balance that will cut across 12 or 13 different pairs of belief statements, where eventually you want to arrive at all of those pairs being so that the enhancing one you're believing in and the limiting one you don't believe in, and so on. And there's a process where you don't necessarily need to address every single one, but it's a bit like if you imagine a river with logs flowing in it, and normally they would kind of flow through the river, okay, but if there's one thing that's gotten sideways and is blocking, it's a bit about the balance process, trying to identify that one, take it out and change it so that everything else can come into alignment. Because this leads on to balances like the optimal health and well-being balance. That's like 25 pairs of statements that you will check in on. It involves quite a comprehensive action plan as well to put things into into reality, to manifest it. Relationships is typically an area that most of us can probably relate to, being a fountain of personal development. So there's processes for that. There's also processes to help address trauma from birth and fears around death, alternative life balances, to essentially go through a process to picture what life could be like that's different now, whether that's in regards to a health condition or something else. It also has some processes to help deal with what we might call apparent reactive responses like allergies, if they're not, let's say, quote unquote true allergies, but there's something called Hebb's law, which neurologically, if you what it's called, the phrase is, what fires together wires together. So if something traumatic happened to you in your earlier years and there was lots of dust in the air, those things might have been fused together. So whenever you're experiencing dust, it might trigger the trauma without you being consciously aware. One really interesting example that I've heard of this effect was through a different kind of training that I went through. And it was somebody who had a fear of snakes. And as they processed through, they found, okay, this guy was sent to boarding school, and there was a memory that came up. He was in a bath and the other boys threw a bucket of snakes in the water. And you think, okay, obviously that's traumatic. That must be why it is. But actually it was the emotional thing that went on at the time, because he felt abandoned by his dad. He'd been sent away. So that was the real emotional trauma. The snakes just happened to be part of the picture. So it was addressing the trauma of feeling abandoned by the dad and coming to a resolution of that, which actually created the healing of the phobia of snakes. Right, so what fires together wires together. Coincidentally, for this particular individual, he was sent away to keep him safe from Colonel Gaddafi. It was an act of love, not abandonment. So in uncovering that created the healing. So that's an example where, yeah, you did get to the root of it, you know, why the reason was there. But what I said earlier, we don't always need to do that. So with PSYCH-K, then, the process that we're going to focus on now is working at the beliefs and how that might affect things like behavior, emotional, blah, 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 our experience in life, how we show up, how we might live a full life. I said this just before we started recording, so I'm not permitted to do public demonstrations of PSYCH-K, so I will turn my camera off once I start doing the work. I will outline the process. You just won't see what I'm doing with the group energy behind the scenes. But I hope that you're open to this experience. I have done some programs doing this in the past during COVID. So I think you will get something out of it if you're open to that. So what I would say though is if this is something that you're interested in, what I love about PSYCH-K is that the training embodies personal and spiritual development. Any training workshop you go on, you're going through doing a lot of transformation yourself. You're experiencing all of the balances yourself. So it's really appealed to me. So if anybody is interested in learning how to do this, so by the way, one of the reasons why I'm not permitted to do live demonstrations and those kind of things is to respect that this is best performed by people who've been trained, so that so you don't go away trying to do things yourself, because there's some subtleties about how you hold space. There's a particular energy and intention behind it as well. So it's to respect that, really. And even things like the basic workshop forms the bread and butter for whatever I do with clients. It doesn't have to go into these core belief balances, for example, which comes at the next level. So psych8.com. I'm not a trainer. I don't get any money for sharing this. This is just so that you can find out more. And if this is something that you find interesting, then you know where you can go. Right, I said it's quite quick that we're going to be able to do things. But before I get into the actual shadow work, any sort of urgent, immediate questions now? Okay, I think that's okay. Great. So let's dig into it. Time to transform. Less talking for me. So what I want to walk you through is identifying something current, present, how are things now? And then we're going to move to what we want instead. So the process, this is the general recipe for a PSYCH-K session, looking what are things now? What do you want instead? Okay, we go through a balance process, which I'll facilitate. Afterwards, we will celebrate to acknowledge that we've done something good for ourselves. And then the last step is to actually action this. Now that you have this new belief that empowers your life, what's one thing that you can do to demonstrate that and put that into the world to really manifest it? So the shadow, think of something that perhaps you don't currently accept or embrace about yourself. You can do this with whatever you want. I don't want to dig so deep into defining shadow work here, but it could be there's a part of your body that you're not currently loving, but you would like to, because it might affect your intimacy in a relationship. It could be something about your personality. Maybe you feel like, oh, I'm too analytical and I'm not connected enough in this way or whatever. Or maybe I wear my heart on the sleeve and I feel like I'm too much for people. Or maybe it's about accepting that there's something that you did or didn't do that you're beating yourself up over. It could be accepting an emotion that currently maybe at some level you're aware that you're not embracing. Anger and grief are two typical ones that come up for both men and women, or any identity in between or around that. But what I want to open up as well is that consider your golden shadow. Maybe there's some greatness that you're actually suppressing, that you're holding back. Is this something that you're making yourself small about? just so that you don't ruffle any feathers or make other people feel uncomfortable because of your greatness, because of how bright you might actually shine. Are there any talents that you're currently not embracing and manifesting? You can think about that as well. I mean, it could be things like your expression for with sexual energy, as just came to me as an example as I wrote this. So just take a moment and reflect. What's the current thing that you would love to transform? Doesn't have to be huge. You can just pick whatever's come up to you now. You can go through the recording later if you want to dig into something a bit deeper. I encourage us to keep it simple, but powerful and effective. That's another general intention that I like to bring in as a commitment in a session, because we can sometimes overthink things. Yeah, so the pen and paper that Viv suggested at the start comes in handy at this point. I'm just going to give you another 30 seconds. So I'm seeing a bit more writing still. And if anybody wants to share, like Wouter has in the chat, feel free. You might give others some ideas, but equally, this might be deeply personal. Something you don't wish to share. So next question, what do you want instead? So pick one thing that came up. If you had several things that you wrote down because it was flowing, pick one thing. And we want to turn that into an empowering, enhancing belief statement. That might start with words like I have here. I accept my ... whatever it is. I embrace my ... whatever it is. I love my... whatever words connect to you. And I've just put an example here. It needs to be positive. So we don't want, like I just said here, like words don't. Our mind will kind of, it doesn't seem to deal with negative words like, gosh, it probably has a better word for it. Like don't, do not. It's an inverse of do. That's what I mean. So it could be, I accept my anger. It could be, I love my belly. Could be, it's safe for me to, I don't know, express my whatever it could be. I'm struggling to think of a concrete example. Yeah, I accept my insecurities. That's a really beautiful one, because it's a very human thing to have them. And if we go around believing that's wrong, we feel like we should not have any insecurities. So yeah, I accept my vulnerability. Something here about overthinking. Accept my psychic gifts. Yeah. So if you can keep this bit as simple as possible, that'd be great. But I would like you to flesh it out a bit more, just in your mind. But you might, like with my example, the core of it could be I accept my anger. or accept my psychic gifts, or whatever it is. Around that, for now, and whilst we're sitting in the process in a moment, flesh it out. So with this example, it could be anger is normal, it's natural, it's safe for me to feel and express my anger. I express my anger in healthy ways. And then you can, without putting words on it, what does that look like? What does that mean? How would you feel like? This might lead to things like I'm comfortable with my anger. I relax my body and I listen to my anger. You know, why is it there? What's the anger telling me? Usually it's somebody's crossed the boundary for yourself or somebody else. So the emotions are communicating something, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if you might notice currently your body tenses up. So I've seen several examples in the chat that are sort of both golden and traditional shadow based, so it's beautiful. So I'm going to take us into the balance process. If you don't feel like you nailed this down completely now, it's okay. I'm going to get us to just ground and center ourselves. So I'd like you to just be comfortable. Close your eyes if you're comfortable. Clearly don't do this if you're listening to this whilst driving a car or operating heavy machinery. Just it's easier typically to go inward. And you can focus on your balance statement and what it means, what it might feel like. Really pay attention to your body, your mind. If you're sensitive to energies, that as well. As much as possible, be the observer. Notice how you feel in the body. As I said, any thoughts? You might notice things shifting. You might notice things feeling heavy and release and get clearer. Maybe not, but just pay attention and be as present as you can. If anybody ends up feeling quite strong emotions, if it feels overwhelming, you can sit yourself in this posture. Just cross your ankles and your wrists. You can have your hands turned up or drop down. This is called a whole brain posture. As we're crossing the body, it actually stimulates integration and connectivity of the two hemispheres of the brain. So this is probably just going to take about 5 minutes. Gosh, I jumped across. I'm going to turn my camera off, and I invite you now to just go inward. Think of your statement. Just be with it. Okay, so from my end, the energy around this has moved and shifted. If you still feel like you're processing, that's okay, but you can gradually come back into the space and the group here. Right, so the first thing I'd invite you to do is celebrate for yourself. One thing that you can do right now in the moment, which could be give yourself a hug, get up and dance, whatever, something that acknowledges for yourself. So yeah, pat on the back. Awesome. If you have people with you, might be good to hug them as well if you do that later. But so I want to just wrap this up with getting the actions. Going to talk about that. I'll hang on until we, officially wrap up for people who might have questions, things they want to share. Already, if you want to share things in the chat, feel free to do. So what we've done now is shifting energy and changing beliefs. You can also view it as we changed the resistance to this new belief. So you need to take an action, however big and small, to help really manifest this. So the mind will take this on board most effectively if it's something new, but it could be something different or something that you do different or notice consciously when you're in a situation where perhaps you would have been triggered with whatever you worked with, but now it's different. As I said, however big or small, it can be anything. So I'm just looking at the chat. So we had one belief that was about being and sharing love. So that an action could be sharing love to somebody that you haven't done it in a way before. That could be yourself. I mean, this could be, you can be so creative with this. And in the Light Warrior group, you can also share things there and ask for ideas. Yeah, brainstorm. Yeah. Well, I see some feedback about feeling some release of emotions and sensing some more peace and confidence. So question, can you listen to this recording every day? Well, you could. You could address one thing every day if you wanted to. So yeah, but just doing another balance is not an action step. That's just one thing to bear in mind. So you want to take a material action if you like. But yeah, definitely do it again. You can dig deeper into some things that you didn't sink your teeth fully into today. As I got you to think about, fleshing things out, you might go through this process specifically about some other things, some other aspects that haven't been fully addressed through the process today.